Excited to be here. Equally excited for you guys to truly take in how physically imposing I am. So, what do we got? You guys got anything going on? Just hanging out in an auditorium?
It's on, bro. If you don't have eye black at home, you better go get some eye black.
When you listen to Mike McDaniel speak, it's never really screamed football coach, let alone NFL head coach. For a little background, McDaniel was originally hired by the Niners as a run game coordinator, but he's also worked as a wide receivers coach. He first worked with Kyle Shanahan all the way back in 2006 and has followed him everywhere. So if you like what you've been seeing from the 49ers offense these past several years, then you ought to enjoy what McDaniel is about to bring to the Dolphins. His players absolutely love his ability to game plan and create creativity. That's why RG3 recently called him a mad genius. But the concern some Dolphins fans have is hiring a head coach who never called plays, as Shanahan does that in San Fran. Now in Miami, McDaniel is going to do it even without that extra experience. But he did say that he's learned that successful play callers don't isolate themselves, which is a good sign in two different ways. For one, a head coach willing to listen and promote discussion from his assistants is a good look. But I think he's also trying to tell us in that quote that he played a big part in Shanahan's successful play calling, and that is backed up by what his players say about him. When he was promoted to coordinator, Kyle Juszczyk called him the absolute best in the game, and that nobody gets more out of his players than McDaniel, adding that he has the most creative run scheme out there, and that he was so deserving of this promotion. George Kittle called him the run game master, and even added that he wanted McDaniel in his contract so he could be with him for the rest of his career. So if you look at it that way, McDaniel has clearly left his mark on his players. And he was responsible for that magic running game that led the Niners to the Super Bowl a few years ago. That includes that NFC Championship game where Raheem Mostert popped off, and I only mention that because Mostert is a free agent who could very well follow McDaniel to the Dolphins. Also, even though he never called the plays, it's worth noting that he did help prepare the scripted plays that the offense would begin every game with. So is this lack of experience worth worrying about? Well, not if you ask his players. Even the ones who barely spent any time with him, like Andrew Hawkins, who played one season under McDaniel, but said he'd bet every dollar in his account that no other candidate understands offensive football the way he does. With all this praise, you may be wondering why he wasn't previously snagged by another team to be their offensive coordinator. I'd say he was surrounded by such a talented staff that he sort of flew under the radar. But there was also this tremendous sense of loyalty between him and Shanahan that was probably at its strongest when he battled problems with alcohol to the point where it almost cost him his career. But Shanahan stayed loyal to him all the way through. Now for the Dolphins, couple of things I'm already thinking of. One, at least he starts every year with a guaranteed win over the Patriots, courtesy of being part of the Miami Dolphins. Two, we could have some great coaching matchups with him and Robert Saleh, both coming from the Niners. Will be interesting to see what type of game plan they have against each other while knowing the other side so well. Which reminds me, the Shanahan coaching tree continues to grow. I know some Dolphins fans are sure to be hesitant when another offensive so-called genius steps into the building with Adam Gase still fresh on the mind. But when you think of the other guys to recently branch off that tree like Kyle Shanahan, Matt LaFleur, Sean McVay's in the Super Bowl again, it certainly gives you some hope. I mean, I think almost every fan base is happy they're not Washington, who had all these guys on their staff only to lose every one. But let's be honest, that's probably the least of all problems over there in the Commanders franchise. Anyway, maybe the main difference with McDaniel is a guy like McVay seems to come off as a leader, while McDaniel sounds, I don't know, maybe just a bit unsure of himself. I'm sure he's confident in his own ability, but it's also important to come off that way to players to get them to buy in and believe in you. That might be one of the biggest differences between a coordinator and head coach. He must have done something like that to be handed the keys to a franchise after the interviewing process. So we'll see if he can do it in an NFL locker room as the man in charge of everything. Also, he isn't necessarily coming into that great of a situation. I know that can be said with just about any open coaching spot, but the Brian Flores lawsuit revealed some serious questions about Stephen Ross as an owner. Players might second guess playing for the Dolphins and be busy wondering what's going on behind the scenes, especially when more details and accusations emerge from Flores saying that Ross tried to pay him $100K per loss in an effort to tank. The lawsuit is going to be a distraction throughout the next year plus, and McDaniel is going to have some players in that locker room thinking that Flores should still be leading their team. The reaction around the league showed that Flores undoubtedly has support from his former players in his lawsuit. That's something that could definitely hurt the Dolphins in free agency. I don't mean to say Ross wants to tank this year. I don't think there's any chance of that when Miami should have the talent to compete for a playoff spot. But I do think players could keep that in the back of their minds when they have comparable offers with the Dolphins and another team. Then again, playing in Miami and having no state income tax could potentially outrule a questionable owner. Either way, McDaniel needs his Dolphins players to love him like they did in San Francisco. If he can accomplish that, then good things will happen down in Miami. Oh yeah, speaking of players believing in him, you know who's most excited for this hire? 24-year-old hybrid receiver running back Lynn Bowden. The second McDaniel was hired, he was on Twitter liking every single tweet about it. That included a tweet calling him the next Deebo Samuel. He spent all of last season on injured reserve, but he was a terrific player in college and could really blossom under the creative mind of McDaniel. About a month ago, I made a video on how Deebo was changing the NFL and how we're going to be seeing more of these hybrid types pop up all around the league. I think McDaniel will immediately want to use Bowden as that chess piece. And besides the idea of Bowden potentially exploding, I'd say Jalen Waddle should be pretty excited as well, especially with Wes Welker coming in as wide receivers coach. Of course, the Dolphins' entire running back room should be thrilled to have McDaniel. And honestly, Tua Tagovailoa should look at how the Niners were able to make it to the NFC Championship with a broken down Jimmy Garoppolo operating the offense, and think that he can do better than that. At the end of the day, the Dolphins are taking a chance on a young, unique, enthusiastic guy who is clearly loved by his previous players. Even though he lacks play calling experience, he's made his mark on a forward-thinking Niners offense that will surely take a hit after losing him. It's a hire that's swinging for the fences and could blow up for all we know, but even if it turns into an absolute dumpster fire, at least we can all sit back and enjoy Mike McDaniel's all-time press conferences.
Mike, what is it about Deebo?
Who?
What's up, man?
Mike Jones, let's go. What's up?
I'm just wondering whether you've kind of seen that manifest itself in him and how he's practiced and how he handled himself in that Week 18 game.
That's good intel. Are you in our draft room? Do you have a nanny cam? No, he